Yeah. Out here from the S. Ross Browne studio in Richmond, Virginia, about to do that Infinite Abstraction podcast. The man of the hour is approaching. Check this out. It's the S. Ross himself. If you don't know, you better ask somebody.
So, thank you for taking the time, brother. I appreciate
My
you.
absolute pleasure.
I appreciate you. Y'all, this is the Infinite Abstraction Podcast. I'm your host, Khalid Thompson, sitting with the fantastic artist and brother, mentor, and my hero, one of my heroes for sure. It's a S. Ross Browne, legacy of art in Richmond that spans decades, a serious artist, and just I'm a huge fan of his work. Thank you for doing this, Ross.
Hey, it's my
I
pleasure.
really appreciate it.
You couldn't, keep me away.
Yeah. I appreciate it. He'd be really looking out for artists on the come up. So we're going to go right into this and flow right into this because I love to talk about the work and the artists and their philosophy behind the work. So Ross, we were talking about earlier about, what motivates your visions for your work. So if you want to kind of run back into that theme and elaborate on that a little bit more, because I'm also seeing all these historical motifs and, just talk about your vision.
Well, it all spans on if it's a commission, if it's my work, if it's because you gotta have a direct commission where someone says, hey, paint a portrait of somebody.
Right.
Or like this piece over here, had a company out of Connecticut called U.S. Games that's commissioned me to paint my interpretation of tarot decks and stuff like that. So it's it's a long process since it's like 200 or more paintings. But I get my inspiration from life, matriculating through life, understanding, that the truth in the morning could be a lie in the afternoon when it comes to what you observe and how you digest it personally. My, I guess, philosophy also grows and changes, the older I become. And although we try to be here in the moment, we wake up day to day in a new moment, and one day we'll wake up in our elder years, in our 80s, God willing, and be like, wow, I'm here now, trying to remember yesteryear. So I try to put as much energy and focus into what I'm painting and what I'm interpreting, which is basically life, whether it's the social political aspect, the anthropological aspect, whether it's mystical aspect, anything that I observe, whether it's interpersonal things, or even the natural world. And I think I was saying I was really digging, there's blue right there. I was digging the still life I'm working on, which is, just pure painting. You're observing something and you're painting it. And that way you really get to understand the breadth of your skills as a painter, your technical virtuosity. When I try to teach my students is first the technical virtuosity aspect, how to paint, how to draw, but also then how to see the world, how to break down everything you see, into a bunch of cylinders and a sphere or cubes and whatever, and then how to deal with composition, and then how to deal with conceptualization. And so that's where my work goes off into a tangent, where I'm trying to combine those things, whereas this is conceptualization, trying to take an abstract idea, abstraction, and give it some sort of visceral meaning that can communicate with the everyday person.
So it's great you said that, because it talks about the relationship between abstraction and representational work to a degree. But how can I say this? So what got you to a point to where, if you're not painting for commissions, let's say you're just doing work that Ross wants to do, because I noticed that in a lot of the work I see, the portrait work you do that's not commissioned, there's a lot of historical reference, a lot of symbolic reference. And I want to kind of get a sense of why you chose the portrait or the representational lane to kind of expound on the emotional,
Well,
the intangible.
it's for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
One, I find it a challenge,
Right.
and so I thought it was interesting to challenge to draw and paint the physical form, and we see ourselves, or even the lack of seeing ourselves, say when it comes to police brutality or something
Mhm.
in other people.
Mhm.
And when I see that physical representation, it's just a better, for me,
Mhm.
a tool for allegories, for stories,
Right.
for storytelling, it doesn't take as much, like if I were to paint me giving you an apple, there's a story of a brother giving another brother food. Now there probably could be something else. Somebody might think of other things, or Adam and Eve or whatever, and all this other stuff,
Right.
but you see that, quickly and can digest it quickly. Sometimes it's too readily digestible.
Okay.
That's why we come into more less concrete concept.
Okay.
But if I were to do it non-objectively, abstract, like this piece by Stephen Hay up there, I would. It would take a little more. If I named it the same thing, if I had the same impetus, had the same goal to communicate me giving you an apple,
Right.
it would have to have certain aspects. I mean, it could be a Casimir Malevich where it's just a white square and a white canvas, and I'd be like, man giving man apple. I mean, it'd be like,
yeah, right.
It's a stretch.
Absolutely.
You could basically say whatever the hell you want.
Right.
But if I were to have some visual elements, non-objective as they were, that I could see that. I could see that. I could see where the red was represented, and that movement looks like it's giving something to someone else. And you would have a little bit more going into it. It's like the difference between, say, a regular blockbuster film and an art house film.
Right.
That might be saying the same thing, but the art house film is trying to be a little more circumspect about the deliverance of the same message.
Okay.
Have more style.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I totally dig that explanation. And it seems like, from what I'm gathering, is that representational work, and there's a spectrum of that, is a bridge to the mystical, to the emotional, or you use it as a starting point to expound on greater ideas that are within your mental wheelhouse.
Right.
So you're like, hey, look, I'm going to give you this reference, but I'm also going to have these symbolic themes encoded in the work for you to understand these, more deeper abstract concepts. And I think you do that quite eloquently and beautifully in the work. I wanted to talk about color, because color is a powerful thing, regardless of the artist. And I noticed that there's certain tones you use in the work, whether it's, dealing with the portrait or dealing with the environment around said portrait, or just dealing with an environment. And I wanted to go into what colors attract you and why you use certain tones and colors in your work in particular. Or do you do that?
Well,
you know what I'm saying? I let you.
Well, when it comes to
that.
the story, I use the colors that convey the message or that are accurate. Like I could have painted a pink bench, but I think a brown wooden bench makes it so it's not the star of the show, but also communicates the fact that it's supposed to be made of wood.
Right.
Right. But sometimes I'll paint people in impossible shades, like a cobalt blue or something like that.
Right.
That is supposed to be a link to the emotion of the piece as well, and also to look deeper into the physical features of the person.
Okay.
We know that they're black, but now they're blue, and so we see the African features now more succinctly, because we're not just looking for the brown skin, we're looking for the lips, the hair, the eyes that convey the story, hopefully on a more universal plane, but also still attaches itself to the physique that I am a part of, being an African man myself, as far as my roots. But color, I look at my palette of colors for pieces and stuff, and a lot of them, people always like, why do you always have such blue palette? Mm-hmm. And I do sometimes, but this piece over here has got lots of orange. Mm-hmm. That's a nice complement to the blue. Mm-hmm. And some of them are blue. I like blue.
Right.
That's one of my favorite colors. All shades color. Of blue. Yeah. But one of my successful pieces was straight reds, and so I don't think I don't just do one particular palette, but I could be known from the breadth of my work to dabble in those particular things. And I think subtlety is the thing. I'm not doing a lot of bright colors,
right?
And if I do, it's like I have a piece in New York at an exhibition at the Barbadian consulate that uses a bright magenta amongst a very sanguine, monochromatic-esque background that's mostly siennas and umbers.
Okay.
But you got this bright splash of electric magenta that gives it kind of exclamation point, and that can be part and parcel to storytelling, but it could also be a stylistic thing that deals with, what looks good before you even see what is being represented.
Right. So what comes to mind first for you, especially when you're not doing a commission piece? What comes to mind for you? What comes to your mind first when you're starting on a painting? Let's say you have a blank canvas. And is it a vision that comes to you? Like, I see this piece and then I start to execute it. Does it unfold as the process goes? What usually happens?
Usually. I mean, I'm sure that can happen sometimes, but usually I have an idea.
Okay.
And like an architect, I make the blueprints for that particular plan of attack.
Okay.
By the time I get the canvas, I want the idea to be fleshed out.
Okay.
I'm not doing a lot of consternation on the canvas. At that point, I could listen to an audiobook and I'm just taking from sketch to canvas, enlarging it. Right.
Okay, great.
But I can change some things, because my sketches are pretty fluid.
Okay.
But so what I do is I sketch. I do it digitally oftentimes, on the computer. I'll do work with Photoshop to take certain ideas. Like I have a whole file of armor, different suits of armor, different gauntlets, stuff like that, that I might take, I might manipulate, I might, place on someone and have the lighting be how I want. Now I'll grab somebody. You've been a subject for a painting, where you would sit and I still got to do you. I got you with Yoshi in your belly and everything. It's coming.
That's gonna be a beautiful piece. Yeah, that's gonna be a beautiful piece.
But I often like to have people I know and see and get their vibe.
Okay.
Now, I'm not painting somebody I don't dig just because they might look good. I've had plenty of people, beautiful women. They're like, "Oh, paint me," and then I'm like, "But I'm not digging you, your personality or what you represent." And so nah. But in some people, I'm too close to them. I always felt, unworthy to paint like my ex-girlfriend, who's also an artist, and she got annoyed by that because she was like, why aren't you painting me? But I'm like, because I have to get it perfect. And when I'm painting, when I paint you, it's not a portrait of you. It doesn't have to look like you. It might accidentally look like you.
Right.
And it accidentally looks like you enough that everybody who comes in the damn gallery is like, yeah, there's a homeboy right there. I'm like, it's not him. It's just, he's actor.
Yeah, pretty much.
You don't see Denzel Washington in the movie and be like, oh, that's Denzel. No, he's playing this role.
Exactly.
And so, but, painting people who I was very, very close to, was a lot of pressure, and I probably should have just tried anyway. I'm sure they would have been flattered at the effort. But, for the personal part, I see somebody in a certain light, and fortunately, people of all ilks no matter what. I mean, they could be a thug on the street, and I'd be like, "Yo, let me get a photo of you for the." They'd be like, "Okay,"
Okay.
they'll do it.
Right.
I'd be like, "Hey, come in here. I want to get a picture, of you for a painting." They're like, "Okay." So it seems like it's kind of a little bit of divine providence that likewise liquid souls are like, "Hey, I understand this vibration. This isn't duplicitous.
Right.
I know that you are not asking for some ulterior motive, that you are a true artist, and I'm honored, to sit for you. I don't pay people. I don't want it to be a transactional thing. If you are willing and you want to, cool. If not, God be with you.
Right. Right.
But it's more about, the acquiescence and the uh, relationship between muse and artist. I mean, I could go to anybody and be like, "Hey, here's $500." It's I'll be like, okay.
Right. So it's important.
Yeah,
It's hugely important.
Yeah, it's important to have that, I guess, volunteerism when it comes to that. But and I'm sure I digressed a long time ago. But as far as the of me using figurative elements, there's a whole lot that goes into it, and then I have to conceptualize, on paper
Right.
or on canvas. My sketches, you look at my sketches, they look like a fifth grader did it. It's just just so I can get the idea,
right.
Just
the
like,
feeling out.
yeah. I'm like, okay, this is the person, this is happening, this is over here. I don't need to. It doesn't have to be, uh, uh, a full-fledged drawing.
For sure.
You look at people from back in the day, they had no cameras. They had to do full-fledged drawings. They all right, sit there, let me make sure everything is perfect, and then I can do a painting from that. But we live in an age where I can take the images myself, and then I can add or subtract to them. I don't have to go out and find a flower. I can just put a flower right there digitally and be like, they're holding that, or this is what's going on, and so and it's rudimentary too. The digital designs that are my sketches are pretty basic.
Right.
It just comes together on a canvas.
Just so you need it, yeah, because you can hone the skills and
Right.
hone everything later.
Right.
So let me ask you, because I know you're a big fan of jazz music, music of the Black diaspora in and around the world, and just music in general. And I know that there's a album cover of John Coltrane's Ascension album that I feel like resonates throughout the space. So you were talking about how important it is when you're doing a subject, if it's a person, how important that there's some kind of connection or spiritual awareness that you're picking up on when you're painting them. There's got to be some kind of energy or some kind of feeling from you. How much does, I won't say spirituality, but how much is energy, intuition, how much does that inform your work? Since we're talking about John Coltrane and intuition and spirituality and art, expound on that a bit, about how your awareness of energy, your sensitivity to energy or spirit informs your practice or motivates your practice.
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, you have to have some life lessons and some experience. And I was doing art therapy at MCV for a while and understanding the duality of life and death when it came to human beings in the hospital setting, and using art to help mitigate the miasma associated with chronic illness or mortal disease. And you really come to understand the truth in the physics doctrine that energy is neither created nor destroyed, it just changes form. And that was often the thing that I spoke to some of my patients about when they were about to bounce from this mortal coil. They would, especially my pediatric patients. And, I would, tell them that, we are just vessels, vessels that hold a vibrational fluid You know, I mean, of course we're, you know, 90 or 80% water,
Yeah.
but fluid in the essence of our spiritual component. Our souls have actual corporeal, have actual weight. You know, I think it's 28 ounces or something like that. But, you know, when we have a hole in our vessel, you have a hole in a cup, the thing you do is you pour it into another vessel that can hold the important liquid that's inside. And so when this vessel deteriorates, you know, what happens to our spiritual essence? Because it's not destroyed, it's not created. Does it transfer? Does it elevate? What happens? And so, you know, my philosophy on that gave a lot of people some solace and peace. But as it pertains to my creation of work, there is a lot of vibrational and spiritual components, but that is oftentimes very difficult to imbue into the visual aspect of the work. I mean, I could do stuff that say, "Oh, look at this wave of things. This is my interpretation of good vibes or something."
Right.
But I more so put it into, you know, channel it through my being, through my arm, you know, because if I'm vibrating and I'm holding the stick and you touch the stick, you feel that vibration. And so oftentimes the vibrations that come through us, spiritual in essence, aren't, you know, like a washing machine shaking, but they're on a different frequency, maybe a frequency you can't readily feel or something, but that you can channel. I mean, there's been plenty of times where you sit in a room and somebody's just staring at the back of your head. You're like,
right on.
You know,
Yeah.
you feel it.
Yeah.
You know,
no question.
If a bad guy walks into the room, you're like, you know, you can dig it. So I try to be in that spiritual mindset and awareness as I'm painting.
Okay.
So that vibration comes through the arm, through the brush, into the liquid of the painting and manifests itself on the canvas, whether I'm painting an apple or painting my interpretation of spiritual essence, you know? And so I think that can be felt through those mediums. I mean, it's probably a good reason why, you know, of course he was pretty bad, but probably a good reason why, you know, people like Hitler's paintings, you know, don't resonate with people because they're filled with such hate and vitriol, even if they are very mundane subject matter.
That's a great point. So you're saying that, because I'm not going to speak for you spiritually, because you can do that yourself. But what I'm gathering, Ross, is what you're saying is that the energy that you're allowing to be filtered through you from the universe, which can be based on your decisions or how you react to things, inevitably it's encoded on the canvas and then it vibrates out to the viewers, things that are much deeper than what we see on the canvas, our feelings and all that. So that's pretty pronounced. And I see a lot of that in your work. And from what I noticed, and this is a great topic to talk about, and I think I want to bring it up. It might sound a little cliche, but I think it's important for artists such as yourself to explain it. And that's this whole notion, and feel free to educate me as well on this term we call Black art. So it would make sense that people that are connected to their culture would, you know, obviously document that culture visually. And now what we may be seeing in the art market is a interest in what is termed as Black art. Do you agree with that label? Do you think it should exist in certain contexts and not in others? What is your perspective? Because you paint people, not solely, but you paint people that are, you know, Black, and in a lot of your works. You also paint other individuals, but what's the reason behind documenting the Black experience? Or let me let you explain that, like, why you might have certain motifs around that.
Black art, there's two aspects. You know, from a museum perspective, it's important to give credit and due to the cultural relevance of the artist, no matter what they're painting, because they can get lost in, oh, this is American realism, and that's it. And they can get lost in there. And the child walking around is not going to know that, damn, that I could do this too because this person is a part of my culture. Right. They would never know because it would not be, and that's cool too because you're like, hey, this is art, but we have genres of art just like we have genres of music, and that art expresses stuff about our cultural relevance. Okay. And so, but anyone, no matter their race, can paint art about Black stories and Black, quote unquote, Black art.
Right.
Great. But we have to not disconnect the art from the artist. All right. That will prove relevancy. I mean, if you have, different cultures, definitely, and we call it appropriation sometimes, do other different genres of things, whether it's music or art. But, for instance, you have people like Iona Browne, who did a lot of, say, Black Asian art, a lot of things that were influenced by Black, by Japanese culture, but it was definitely rooted in Black culture as well. All right. That was her interpretation, and that's still authentic. All right. There are Black people in Japan, and their interpretation of the culture is relevant. All right. And vice versa. All right. But if you're having someone who's an artist who is painting about the personal experiences of being Black in America, if you have, for instance, somebody who's painting about the personal experience of being Black in America, it would be kind of inauthentic for someone who is not Black to paint that. Just like it'd be inauthentic for somebody who is not Native American to paint about the trials and tribulations of living on a reservation. You know what I'm saying? And so, but there are people, I even have friends of mine who paint about the Black experience, but to paint about, what it means to walk down the street in skin that you can't change, that people immediately make their assumptions and judgments about you based on, the patina of your flesh. That's something that can't be, appropriated. You can't say, oh, that's it. And so that story is something totally different. I mean, Black people paint landscapes. That doesn't necessarily make it Black art unless you paint a landscape of, a Black neighborhood, like with Black people in it, or things, with cultural references of that aspect. I mean, if I go to the forest and I basically do, what Ansel Adams takes photos of, it's a Black artist, and it could be my experience of being a Black of being a Black person in the woods, but that would have to entail a written statement about that work. I believe, if I just paint a woods and it's beautiful and arboreal and bucolic, and you're like, all right, and I say nothing else about it, and my name associated with this painting is lost in history, it's just a landscape. You might not be able to glean anything more from it than you could from, you would glean more from, say, this literal and figurative reference, but it's just a landscape. Now, if I write a whole statement about how, Black people used to hide in the woods, and this mountain was, named this because of the amount of people that, found, a refuge, and then it becomes a story associated with the artist's experience, and it becomes Black art. But you have to have those references. You have a lot of people who are doing abstract, like Sam Gilliam does abstract pieces, but it really feels culturally relevant, dealing with this color spectrum, dealing with his brushstroke, dealing with the things he's doing, and on top of that, his artist statement about why he's doing it,
Right.
pulls it all together.
Right.
Your work is very vibrant and very immersed in the African diaspora, just on its face value. But you talk to you and you're like, oh, okay, this is the vibration, this is the feeling, this is the story I'm trying to say. Then it ties it together. And some things need that. Some things need, a little bit more. You could taste a delicious culinary item. You could taste shrimp and grits and be like, this is delicious. If Paula Dean's making shrimp and grits, you might lose the cultural reference to Senegal. You go to Senegal, they make shrimp and grits exactly like the South. Now, is that a coincidence? I think not.
Right.
And so I think Black art is something that is both subtle and overt. Okay. And if you don't understand the root of it, then it might lose its spiritual, vibrational, and artistic virtuosity when it comes to not even artistic virtuosity, but its artistic meaning when it comes to the impetus for the piece. So again, we've been doing a lot of like this show here is, the Black American Artists Alliance, Richmond. A publication we're working on is the definition of Black art. What makes it Black art. And as an example, P. Muzi Branch, artist, painted still life, and it was like not Black art, but he painted the same still life with African fabrics adorning underneath the objects that were done, and he was like, Black art, now it has a cultural relevance that's rooted in that, Now there's a cat that, that was painting all these images of, I forget his name, but he's painting all these images of Black people and getting dangerously close to minstrelsdom on how dark he was getting these people. But he just started painting Black people out of the blue for fiscal reasons.
Right.
He didn't, and this is a white cat. I think he's like from Arizona or something, but he did not. And what got me miffed is that every statement that he said, no matter what the visual reference was, seemed to be about lynching. I'm like, you just seem to be, saying bullet points that are meant to get people, oh, this is, controversial. And then he would post books that he read about the Black experiences, like Right Fragility and all this stuff. Like, look, see, I know. I'm like, you didn't know a year ago. and I can dig it. You can paint what you want, but don't give this ersatz authenticity to it. You can paint from your perspective. You can paint as a white person painting Black people saying, wow, I've never really knew about, but I want to understand. And I want to paint these people because this is something that's inspiring me. Don't paint as if you understand and you're saying all these stories to grab the attention of Black people to buy your shit.
Right.
That's inauthentic and offensive.
Right. So, so to ask you, so for you, Black art, from what I'm gathering, Ross, is about experience.
It can be about experience. It's about experience, but it's also about your experience of, your experience, your authentic experience of that people.
As a Black person.
Like a person who's white that paints Black art, my friend Tim Okamura.
Right.
He's Black, and I think he's also half Asian, but he experiences Black culture. He it's first his observation, but then, he's lived in Brooklyn for 30 years. He's immersed in people. He's painting from what he understands with his interpretation, what he's trying to know. He's not making assumptions. Right. He's not saying, well, this is how I think Black people understand stuff. No, he's trying to learn, and he's also there. He's he's experienced. It's authentic. You can see the authenticity.
Right.
You know, even in the sensitivity of the portraiture. But you have other people who are like, yo, this is a cash cow because it's hip now. This is the new thing. And so I'm gonna jump on that bandwagon and paint things that are jarring and triggering to Black people, you know, that I think are. And then my statement is going to be triggering and jarring shit. Like,
right.
You know, somebody who's just standing there in overalls and you say, oh, this is about slavery and lynching. Shut the fuck up.
Wow.
You
Wow.
know?
Wow. No, that's profound. That's a very profound explanation on it. And I agree with you. It depends on the context, but I think primarily it sounds like experience, you know, the Black experience.
And there's nuance. I mean, for instance, you see what's his name? I'm forgetting the daggone name. Him and Turner, who painted the slave ship, he's not trying to write a treatise on slavery. He is seeing what he wrote, what he's observed at the time of slavery, in a very powerful way. And also, is it Winslow Homer painting, you know, his observance of Black men on boats in the sea and such, and you get a sense of the culture of everything, but he is not trying to say, oh, I get it. He's like, I'm observing it and I'm trying to understand it. And what I do observe is that these are some beautiful people doing something in a beautiful setting that is obviously hard, and obviously, you know, folks that we don't even give a damn about in the 19th and 18th century, much less, you know, now.
Right. Right. That's all of the discussion.
You know, you see it, and you see the authenticity, you know, of it. You know, it's Black art, you know,
right.
You know, but for different reasons than, say, John Biggers is Black art.
Right. That's a great point. And shout out to John Biggers, by the way.
Yeah.
One of your major influences.
One of my favorite artists.
Check out his work. Check out his work. You'll see a correlation, inspiration. So music. I want to talk about other artistic disciplines that consciously or subconsciously play an influence in how you stylize and create your images. Because I know that the way your placement, or I'm assuming that your placement of your images and all that doesn't just come from artists that have inspired you, but they could also come from photographers, musicians, dancers, architecture. And I'd like for you to go in on possibly some of the other influences that might shape your work. They have an influence on the outcome. It just might not be direct.
Yeah, well, all of that stuff, and all that stuff plays into, you know, growing up in the Black experience, and then also growing up, you know, in the dichotomy of the white experience. I mean, I dare say most Black people, if not all, are experts on white culture because they have to be, whereas not all white people are experts on Black culture.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, for
and
sure.
So, you know, back in the day, we only had a few radio stations and TV shows, so everybody looked at everybody else's culture.
Right.
You didn't separate. Everybody watched Hee Haw and freaking All in the Family,
Dukes
and the
of Hazzard.
Jeffersons, Dukes of Hazzard, and freaking Good Times.
Yeah.
You watched it all.
Yeah.
But you also got to come to understand other people's culture.
Right.
You know, you listened to it all. You know, we were listening in Richmond, they had Q94, and you played everything, you know, from Charlie Daniels Band to Parliament Funkadelic, you know, and you got to listen to it all. Now we've pretty much resegregated everything, and you have to be interested or at least knowledgeable. And so growing up is a different time for me to be influenced. Back then we had album covers that had art. You look at Santana's Abraxas or Miles Davis's Tutu, or Bitches Brew, or any Brothers Johnson or Parliament Funkadelic or Earth, Wind and Fire album cover.
Hunter's album.
Yeah, you would just sit there all day like, wow. And then the music would be a total secondary aspect. You know, even, you know, looking at Ohio players, you're like, damn, this is pretty racist. This is great, you know, this is wonderful. But that was inspiring. The music and the art went hand in hand. Nowadays, it's just a person's face, and like, I guess that's who it is. It's nothing, you know. Sometimes you get something that has some creative aspect. You know, maybe an illustrator, or maybe the photograph was inspired, but most of the time, it's forgettable.
Right.
You know, and so music, as pertained to art, was a thing I grew up with as well.
Wow.
You know, good music, music that was made with instruments, and even music that was made primarily with photography was excellent photography. You look at the old Blue Note records and, you know, Coltrane over there and all of them. It was cool. It was a nice photograph that had some nice graphic design. You had, you know, you look at, the photographs. You could see the style in it. It looked like a old school bank heist, you know, with some style and the music and the walking of the bass. You're like, yo, this is going to be good, you know. And so it was a preamble and a precursor to what was cool and something to endeavor to, you know, like your cool uncle who would come over and be like, yeah, it's cool, you know. But, you know, and so style can also be determined through art, through music and fashion and other things. You see style permeating, you know, different artists like, you know, Nick Cave or, you know, other people. What's his name? God, I can't remember his name. I got his book right in there. Everybody was what do you call it? Inspired by him. I'm gonna have to grab that book. But everybody from
say Romeo Bearden is a prime example.
Yeah.
You know,
but this cat I'm thinking about, and I don't know why I'm drawing a blank.
Right.
People from Amy Sherrill to Kiende to Titus, you know, all these cats were inspired by him. He came first in the 70s and was doing his wonderful portraiture. I'll get the name in a second.
Okay, and we'll reference it in the link. Yeah. We'll put it in the link.
I have the book in there.
Okay, great.
But another thing that I wanted to say was in reference. Is it Ron Goss? No. This is an artist. A painter.
This is an artist, a painter. Yeah.
It's if you can't find it, it's a book. It's a small book with brother's portrait on the front cover. But another thing I wanted to come back to real quick about black art real quick was, and I probably need to get the book. There was a artist out of Barbados, you know, who happens to be white, just like you could say some artist who happens to be black, who, you know, grew up, you know, in that culture.
Yeah.
She's basically knows black culture, and what she painted was so sensitively done and so beautiful that, you know,
it's there.
It's her experience. It's authentic.
Right.
It's as authentic as if anybody painted it, because it's her experience, you know, as a person, as a human that happened to be white, immersed in black culture. And you paint from that, then that's authentic, you know? And so, as a segue, she was also immersed in the music of that culture, and it could be seen in how the paint was applied, how the imagery. I have the book in there, so I'll grab that.
So Ross had just hit me to this artist, Allison Chapman Andrews, who is a white artist who grew up in Barbados and was talking about how experience connects with the work and how you can feel authenticity through people who experience the life that they're portraying in their work. And he also wanted to mention another artist, and go ahead and mention this artist as a reference point for other people who might want to research.
Yeah, that would be Barclay Hendricks, who did these wonderful portraits of black folk back in the day. I mean, you look at the pieces and you're like, yeah, that's 70s. Look at that. Look at those boots. Look at that outfit. Look at that collar.
Right.
But so many people have been influenced by his work, from Kende Wiley to Amy Sherrill. You know, you could look at the works and be like, yo, this
It taps right into that.
It taps, and that's an homage. That's wonderful,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And you know, there's so many people who've done, um, uh, you know, who've you know, you can't create stuff in a vacuum. You know,
Right.
you're going to have influences.
Right.
So to go back to your question, you know, music is part of culture, but music, food, you know, all the things that make Black American culture,
Mm-hmm.
something that's unique in the world, definitely has something to do. Now, there's some Black folk that probably never been around Black American culture, but once they see it, they know that something's missing.
Right. Man, that's I'm really glad that you elaborated on that, and how important it is for people to understand, that there will be artists that will be sincere about what they create from lived experience, and there will be artists, you know, who will be opportunists in the market, and that if you are looking at work, make sure you feel that sensitivity and authenticity coming from the work. And just want to finish up. First of all, this has been a wonderful interview. I highly recommend that y'all support and check out Ross's work. We will have links to his work. He's also a phenomenal teacher. If you're in the DC, Richmond area, Virginia-ish, definitely come through and check out his gallery space and his work. He's been doing this for a long time. He's an excellent artist. So there's the realities for people. They think that being an artist, especially if you're a full-time artist, means this or means that. Your journey as becoming the full-time artist that you are, the respected artist that you are, what could you share with people who are aspiring to be full-time artists? Is there any advice that you would give them, or that you would like to share, or do you just want to talk about what it took you to get to where you're at today, and how realistic is it for people
Well,
who
you
want to
know,
pursue this?
yeah, do as I say, not as I do, type thing. In that regard, treat it like a full-time job. Get up in the morning and paint for 8 hours, and then, you know, do the other stuff that other people who do 9 to 5s do. 10, 12 hours if you want to. You know, you want to have some connection to your enslaved ancestors. Can't see in the morning, can't see at night. Paint that long, you know, and produce the work. Chase your passion in the craft, not the money. The money will take care of itself.
Okay.
You know, your art as an artist is not necessarily what you do, but who you are, how you see the world, how you interact with the world, how you interact with other people, how you taste food, how you listen to music, how you envision architecture, how you look at nature, you know, how you absorb literature and, you know, political upheaval. You know, all of that is done through the lens of an artist and informs the work and keeps the work not only authentic, but sincere, you know. And so, you know, if you want to be a full-time artist, buyer beware, caveat emptor. Don't do it. No, but if you can't help it, if that's who you are, right, and no matter what you're going to do, you're going to be an artist, then, you know, reinvent the wheel. You know,
right.
Just do what other successful artists have done. You know,
there you go.
Get your MFA from a reputable school and follow the path, and, you know, things will work out. You know, you know, hone your skill. I mean, also be realistic. I mean, if you're not good at a particular genre, find another genre and knock that out. You know, find your lane. You know, because, you know, there's some stuff that, you know, I'm like, I don't have the patience for certain genres of work.
Right.
You know, I could do it, but I'm not.
Right.
You know,
it's not your thing.
And people probably would buy the hell out of my stuff if I painted some Thomas Kincaid type crap, but I'm not going to do it.
Right.
It might be easier.
Right.
I might get paid, but
That's not the
That's
point.
not the point.
Right. So a lot of times people who are aspiring to be artists will think, oh, I just sell my work and that's it. Talk about some of the other ways that artists, full-time artists, make money that has nothing to do directly with them making art.
Yeah. Well, you can, well, for me personally, I give lectures, I do other projects and products like apparel. I do certain reproductions because I want the people to be able to have access to my work, not just people who have, high incomes.
Right.
I do murals. I even do some acting. I do write. I'm a guest editor for a magazine today. I do other things. You have to be what do you call it? Diversified.
Right.
If you want to eat on a regular basis.
Seriously, there's truth in everything he's saying, y'all. I'm gonna keep it 100.
You have to be diversified.
For sure. Workshops, teaching, all of that.
That's right. Teach too.
Yeah,
whatever,
teaching.
Whatever it takes. Whatever is the but all of that is just part of the inspiration of it all.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure 5-star chefs find themselves in restaurants a lot because they love food. And I find myself in museums and galleries, sometimes looking at the same damn painting over and over again.
For sure.
Trying to unlock its secrets.
For sure.
You just have to, be open to that diversification. Some people like to try and just stay in one particular lane and stuff, and it might work for some people.
Right.
Right. You might get lucky, you might have representation, but either way, you're going to have to understand the business of art, and that's a sense of diversification in and of itself.
Right. Well, this has been a fantastic discussion. I'm truly honored that you took out the time to support the podcast and to give your thoughts and your ideas on, art and your art and the importance of art. I can't stress to you enough how important it is to not just, support artists by buying their work, which is an obvious, but also to get into the underpinnings of their philosophies and their ideas, because the work becomes more real, more tangible, and more spiritual when you do that. Is there anything that you have upcoming? You just did a wonderful mural down the street here.
Oh yeah.
So he's a fantastic muralist, by the way, and I admire him greatly because he does everything by brush and paint, which on the few projects I've done has been the case because I'm a painter's painter like that. So I really am admired by that, and it instills confidence in me to paint murals. But
it might be
that's
nice
down the
to do
street.
a John Henry thing where I go against somebody who does with spray can, and I do a paintbrush, and see who can do it not only faster but better.
Y'all, well, I ain't saying nothing because that ain't happening to me, but this man has put in the work and he deserves it.
Not that, look, I got a lot of my friends who they use spray cans.
Nothing wrong with it.
But also the smart ones, diversification, they use spray cans and paintbrush.
Right.
I'm talking about like Ham Glass and Jason Ford. They spray cans and paintbrush.
Yes, they got the whole gamut. He said diversification.
And they're fantastic and excellent. And I might not even be able to keep up, but it'll be fun to try. Cool. But yeah, I have a piece. Hopefully y'all can get a picture of it down there. I think the street lights would hook it up.
All right, cool.
And you said a question, sorry, lastly, to bring it down.
No. So yeah, but in addition to that, what upcoming project shows? You have a group show in your gallery space. A lot of people know he has a gallery space
through the 28th. At here at the Browne Studio, 1100 Hall Street. Also have a group exhibition happening at the Black History Museum through the 16th or 19th of December. Bodies of Labor, wonderful. This one here is called America the Beautiful ? Bodies of Labor. I also have a show coming up, a solo show in February. I'm not exactly sure the right date. I haven't even titled the show yet, and I haven't even finished stuff for the show yet. But it's at Mary Baldwin University in Stanton, Virginia, in February, solo show, and working on the tarot deck project. I'll be finishing that up hopefully soon, and some other stuff I'm doing, but I can't remember.
Hey, that's a busy man for you, and that's what you want to be as an artist. Busy, because that means your bills are getting paid. But so your website, let's get that on there. I'm gonna put it on the end of it, but I'll let you
It's
say.
being revamped. You can see the old website that I haven't updated since 2019 at srossbrown.com, or you can go to Browne Artistic, Browne with an E, artistic.com for my e-commerce and art for the people. And if you see my logo, it looks like a pirate flag because I'm pirating my own shit. Also, check out my Instagram at srossbrown with the E, srossbrown. Right now, that's the main interface. Of course, I have a professional Facebook aspect as well, but that main interface is the Instagram. But those are all ways to contact me and to see some work. Also, just Google S. Ross Browne, stuff comes up.
There you have it, y'all. So all the information has been put out there. We'll put it in the link so you can access this brother and his wonderful work. And thank you so much for the time. Infinite Abstraction Podcast. Appreciate Brother Ross here. Thank you so much.
Indeed. Yeah. Blessings, and grateful to have me and to let me show you some hospitality in my creative space.
It's an honor.